want to talk a bit about my business plan. And I've been thinking that I just woke up, so my voice isn't warmed up yet, but I was thinking that I want to start a peer-run social purpose business. And maybe I'd be the only real owner, I'm not sure, but it would be for peers, for my peers. And I feel like it would be run based on projects versus, okay, you're an employee and then all these expectations and pressures and things. So if something needs to be done, it's put out as a contract and someone can do it and get paid for it and maybe never work again, and that's fine. So it's based more on creating value and trading money for value than trading money to enslave people to the clock, which is one of the things that people like me have a hard time doing, is being a slave to the clock and working on command based on the hours of the day versus working when one is able to work. So if somebody got a contract of some kind, they'd look at it, read it over, and sort of maybe ponder it for a week or two, and then all of a sudden, boom, it would just be done. Versus saying, okay, come in and work on this every single day. So those structures of society created by the ego mind and sort of wanting to enslave people is not part of the plan. And it's partly that peers are misunderstood visionaries. Maybe all of them don't identify that way, but I have a feeling that some of them will. And it would also be just a platform to co-create and collaborate based on visions and what a person saw. I've talked about in previous videos how somebody might see this grand vision of what life could be like or what the world is like underneath all this noise of the ego, but it's hard to help that to manifest for everyone to see if one is just by themselves in isolation. So this would give a collectiveness to it and a platform and just that opportunity to collaborate and create value. And in that way, a person's creating value based on their visions and not based on fitting in to a cog in the machine role. And that's the thing I don't agree with, is that to rehabilitate someone just to fit back into society, when society and the stress of society and all those pressures and false constructs are some of the things that make a person begin to not function and appear as unwell. This would be creating an alignment with functioning as a living human being, maybe feeling very creative for a week and then not feeling creative for 2 months. But maybe a person got more done in that week than they would if they were sitting somewhere sort of tasked to do something every day all the time. So I feel part of this vision in this company, this business, is not to rehabilitate people just to be cogs again, because then, it's only a matter of time before the person apparently becomes unwell, and then we think, well, something's wrong with them. It's like, no, the whole process starts in order for us to act differently and be animated differently by the universe in order to create a different society. So if a person is just funneled back into society, that's missing the point. It's not a personal problem. That's the thing. It's a visionary thing. And if a person's seeing visions of how it could be and should be and would be and all this, and then they're trying to just be a cog in the machine, there's a big gap there. There's a big dissonance. It's like seeing all these visions and all this wonderfulness and getting pretty much crushed by it because one is powerless to co-create it. And that's why this would also create that context and space, not just necessarily physical space, but it could even just be an online community where people have the chance to collaborate in that way based on visions. And the thing with the visions too, it's an altruistic thing. It's for the betterment of society, apparently. And so to train one and rehabilitate a person to just be their ego again is again missing the point. And it's not that we don't need any ego, it's just that this process seems to shatter the ego in such a way that we see that the amount we actually need the ego is very limited, and our ego actually creates the society that creates all this stress, that creates these problems. And then, the solution is the professionals with their professional help. So this is really about helping people to step into that creative self that they've become, and not suppress that creative self and then say, okay, well, now you are better because you fit back into society. I think we're designed to co-create a better society for everybody, and that's the point of this energy. So to make it a personal problem and then to try to solve that problem is the problem. And to give people a space to be altruistic right away, maybe when they're even still really struggling with it, that would be part of it too, is to create partnerships with some volunteer organizations or organizations that need volunteers that are the general categories of the things that people really connect with when they're in those altruistic states. And some of it might not even be not just like, oh, here's a person to volunteer to help you out cleaning the toilets at your volunteer organization, but maybe a person really connected with something that might really expedite that particular cause, and to connect that person with a volunteer organization in order to do that would really provide value, and it would validate what the person's going through and be congruent with that energy. A lot of times people do end up volunteering, but it's sort of just a little token role or something, and that's important too, but I feel people have this energy that is really, it's of value to society, and that's the point with this too, is to show people that go into these states that identify as visionaries, somewhere to channel that energy, because I think that's what often squashes us, is we're going through this visionary world in the ego world mixed in, and eventually we just sort of get stuck in the mud, like we're in quicksand of the ego. Yet we can see this visionary world, and then eventually we're in the ego quicksand, we can't even move, yet we can still see all this visionary stuff everywhere, and there's nothing we can do about it. So this would be the element of what can we do about it? And it's not meant to be like, oh, this is some big movement or cause. It's just sort of how the world is. It's not anything unnatural. We are designed to co-create the world and to give input and observe and act based on those observations, not just react based on what we've been told to know and believe. So it's not really that mysterious. But at the same way, society is not designed to nurture that. Like, we don't nurture kids in their innate capacities throughout their entire life, and each kid is sort of on their own path from the very start. No, we funnel them into classrooms and sit them down on desks and get them to learn the same thing at the same time, which is mostly memorizing garbage that is outdated in terms of technology. So they're not taught to be co-creators, yet they still always have that capacity. And then we wonder why they can't sit still or can't focus. Like, they can't focus on garbage, and then we say they have a concentration problem, they have ADD and stuff. That is lame, and I think that's child abuse, and they can't stick up for themselves, and there's nothing they can do. They're in this prison of supposed education. So I see this company or this business as well as like a mass harvesting of mania. And I've talked about harvest your mania, practice and embody your mania. And this would be another way to harvest. So part of it could even be that people can share their visions and then get a little bit of compensation for sharing their visions. And some of that could be in that if, say, 1,000 people share their visions and there's 90% overlap, then it's kind of proving that there's something to this vision, because all these separate people are saying the same thing. Or if somebody shares their vision and it's a separate piece of the puzzle, like I don't know which it would be, then they get some kind of compensation because they just helped co-create. They gave their piece of the puzzle. And so I'm not sure how to work that out, but it's important for people to give their piece of puzzle. Even if somebody's a visionary and they don't want to co-create the vision, if they give their piece of the puzzle and they want to go back to just functioning as an ego in society, there's nothing wrong with that. It could almost be just giving somebody that outlet to share that energy so they can move on with their life and live just a regular life. And I don't mean regular as in bad. It's just like, oh, I've been tormented by this vision of this happening or this needing to be done, but I don't want to create it. So just giving that away, and then maybe it'll release that pressure. It's like, oh, I was able to say that and share that. I've been holding this in my whole life, and there's nothing I can do about it. So by sharing the vision too, it helps create that vision of who can do what parts of the vision. So I might have a bunch of visions that I have no capability of doing. But if I share it, somebody else says, oh, I can do that part. And I have these visions that I can't do, but I can do that part. So say, for example, in this, I can see things that need to be done just as part of the business structure. I can't do them all. I can't design a beautiful website. I can design a crappy WordPress one. And not that WordPress is crappy, it's just I don't know how to use it very well. And that would take me a long time to figure it out. Or somebody else that comes into the process might already know how to do that. I'm sure people do. And so they can do that part. So I actually want to create the business in a structure of starting from absolute zero, and every piece of it employs a visionary to build it. So I could go get some professional company to design a website and pay a lot of money, or I could invest in somebody else who's also a visionary, who might be unemployed or on minimal employment, to do it. And so I feel like even the plan of the business, I have general ideas, would be also co-created by the people. So that would be the business model in a way, is that the business clients are actually part of creating the business. Not, okay, I created some huge business plan and now I have this big scheme to get money off of people. It's, I have a big scheme to create a business and pay people, actually give people money to create the business, versus creating the business and then asking for people's money. And so in that way, each person is kind of part owner, part creator of the business, and they value the business. So, you know, there's other ways to do it, like a charity or something, but I don't want to have a board of directors of people sitting around humming and hawing, deciding what to do. I just want to see something that needs to be done and do it. And the thing too is, you know, then all this money goes into the organization, and the organization becomes important. I think the people are important from day one. And I'm not even that much of a people person. I'm not great with people. And that's another thing that would be part of the business, is there'd be people that are really good at people. I'm not good at business. I'm not good at people. I don't know what I'm actually good at. Maybe I'm just kind of a visionary. And then the people that come to the organization will be more the structure of the business than I am. Like, I want to be able to have ideas and have people resonate with them and then work on those ideas, because I can't do all the ideas myself. So I might just be kind of the visionary, but I'm not really like the business person or the people person or anything. I just want to, I have a vision of people co-creating and collaborating, and also people going from being dulled out to thriving and being creative. I have this sense that, say for example, the business invested in people versus people paying the business. The business invested $10,000 to change someone's life, for example, and now that person, instead of being disabled for the rest of their life, is, you know, a productive member of the community. And it might not even be a productive member of the current society, but maybe the 10,000 would create a productive co-creator of this new society, or changing the social fabric, creating change agents, because these people, I feel, already have that altruistic sense. Their ego is already scrambled. That's why they have trouble functioning, going from, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, and I'm successful. And it's hard to work that way, especially when the steps are interfered with by visions of a different world. So to me, it would be about really creating, the first thing would be safety. So creating a safety plan, maybe having a wellness recovery action plan, maybe going through Bipolar in Order course, also doing some TRE, and also having a ZAP strap, and also having a representation agreement and a advance directive. And so in that way, that could be just a 2-year process right there, just to get the person with those things. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I have those things. And I might be the person that's sort of like 2 years ahead in that way. And that's part of it too, is that once a person goes through the process, they can help someone else go through this process of going from being a dullness person to a person dulled out to being kind of like one of these wellness ambassadors. So once a person has these different frameworks within them, because they've done them, they can then sort of pass those frameworks on, and in that way it's sort of like a pyramid. It's like a pyramid scheme of creating wellness in people that have been misunderstood and marginalized. And it's not just about healing. It's also about the fact that people have gifts to give, and they want to give them. So I was thinking too that this business sort of trains visionary support workers. So there's peer support workers, but I feel like this is visionary support worker training. And then in that way, a person can help someone become the visionary that they are, if they want to. And that would take things like, say, like doing some rolfing maybe, or taking EMP, which can help people reduce medications, as well as maybe orthomolecular naturopath stuff. And that's the thing too, that I guess this part of the program wouldn't be for people who are screwing around. This is for people who actually really want to transform. And there could be other parts where people could still contribute. Like nothing is wrong with being on medication if one finds it helpful. And part of it too would be creating the context for people to understand it in a different way. Just like that woman whose child refused to be diagnosed with something because they thought they're a visionary. Well, apparently that person wouldn't go to anything that had anything to do with mental health or anything. And this would be a place for people to go if they did not, in any way, shape, or form, buy into or subscribe to the paradigm that they were trying to be convinced was what was happening. And there's a lot of people who find that paradigm helpful, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I have found it helpful too. But I also feel that I would personally like to transcend it, because I don't feel that is entirely what is going on for me. Just because it's been helpful doesn't mean that it's true. So, I might have a really sore leg, and so I'm taking medication. And then so if I cut my arm, that medication helps with the fact that my arm is now in pain, but it doesn't mean it has anything to do with my leg. That's not a very good analogy, but I'm trying to think of something that, like pain medication can help if I have like a big tumor and it's hurting me, but it's not actually going to get rid of the tumor. The fact is there's a tumor there, but the tumor causes pain. So I feel there's something else happening, and the medication masks the pain, but it's not getting to the root cause of the pain, which is something more to do with trauma. And the trauma, I actually believe, makes a person resonate with the fact that this whole society is traumatic. So if I'm going along and society's just fine and life's good, and then I get traumatized in some way, everywhere I look feels like trauma. And maybe it is trauma, and just being traumatized makes a person have the lens that everything is that way, is traumatizing in some way. You could see education as traumatizing. You can see almost anything that is supposedly good as traumatizing. You could be traumatized and look at the TV, and commercials that usually seem benign just seem absolutely horrendous. So it puts a person in that state to see that everything is kind of like that. And then in that way, it makes us have visions of what needs to change. So in order for it not to be like that. So that would be part of it too, is having just a trauma-informed lifestyle design until one is able to step into their fully thriving lifestyle. So that's one of the main assumptions of this business, is that the human mind and the human heart, and especially the one that we connect with in that manic consciousness, is one of the biggest untapped resources. And those visions and those dreams are one of the largest untapped resources. So this would give a chance for people to share what they've seen and what they've felt. And that even just having people say those things might be enough to change the context of the earth. Like if somebody's saying on video after video, like, oh my gosh, like trees being cut down is just, it's actually harming us and we just don't see it. If enough people said that, maybe they would stop cutting them down so thoughtlessly. There are other resources besides trees for having toilet paper and stuff like that. So the projects aren't based on time, they're based on value and creativity and creation. And again, when I talked about the inner dimensions of humanity and how we have this ego in there that is based on time and space in there, really those inner dimensions are creativity, learning, sharing, giving, laughing, loving, joy. So any project that creates something about that, those are the real currencies of humanity, not money. Those are actually what motivate us and drive us and make us go. So projects based on that, and some of those, though, that would just be the reward, is the human reward, and not necessarily money. And maybe that would shift a little bit the reliance on money. If we were in touch with that again and we realized that we create that, then we would just create that and not necessarily think, oh, I need a job to get paid. We would know what to do. We would know what to create. That being said, it'd be lovely to funnel a bunch of money out of the corporations. So I don't necessarily want to charge people coming into the company, but by coming into the business and being a part of it and being almost like a consultant to corporations who maybe want to make more money, but they would be providing their visionary perspective, which would make the corporation more money based on human values. And then the corporation would have to pay a lot of money for us to go in and do that. So now that would shift corporations making money in a better way, and would also make us money from the corporations. So I see that it could be a collective of people that are visionaries, and instead of thinking in terms of being stigmatized for stuff, it's like, I am super valuable to humanity. And it could almost be like a business of some of the most super valuable, misunderstood human beings on the planet who have had no space or place to actually share their perspective, which is a really, really high perspective, and giving them that collective place and having more than one person. So if there's 1,000 people saying something that might be considered a delusion, but together they're saying it in one space, and then it won't seem that delusional. So it's human dimension based, replacing time. Like chronological time ticks by, but that is not the value. So it's social capital, it's oxytocin. It's almost like the reward for doing the projects is oxytocin, and the amount of oxytocin almost is the amount of money a person will get. And this oxytocin thing would help change us to a relaxed physiology so we can actually see the beautiful world that's already there and not be so stressed. When we're so stressed, we're buying into this ego construct of society. It's almost being stressed by the ego thoughts which we've been given by this society, and it's buying into that stress. When we connect with that human dimension, we don't buy into that anymore. We're not creating stress within ourselves and poisoning ourselves for the sake of this wrong meaning we've been given. And since it's wrong meaning, it stresses us out. So I see this as the reversal of that. So I want to interview people for their ideas and their visions, and just get a lot of content. And companies would have to pay for our perspective. And maybe people would get money for uploading their video. So people in the project would need the best phones. They'd have to be turned into like real-time harvesters, and have their like LinkedIn profile, their YouTube and everything up and going so they can just post to it. Almost needs to be like a new video portal. So safety training is important. Must have like a zap strap and a PRN if we get into that other realm. And your safety plan. And that's the thing, it's one thing to say I'm spiritual. That's almost a bit of an oxymoron, because I, the ego, can't be spiritual. So it's actually the denial of the ego that is the spiritual aspect of us, and that's the collective, that's the oneness. And oneness implies altruism, because it's just one thing. So we have to be working for that altruistic social fabric. So it's one thing to say I'm spiritual, it's another thing to say, well, what does that mean? What are you going to do for the world? Because if you say I'm spiritual and continue to only do for the ego, then that's not spiritual. And that's the thing too, is to become spiritual and then say, well, now I'm going to charge people for my service because I'm spiritual. That spiritual gift is often the part that is meant to be given to society. I know in the shamanic culture, the shamanic stuff of a person that they participate with, they can't charge for, but they can still go and they still have to do their regular job plus shamanism. So in this way, it's kind of like, yeah, you still have to do your regular job. So maybe there'd be a way within the business to create the shamania aspect where people are sharing that and helping, which they don't get money for. And then also they could maybe ask for gifts in kind, but then they also have a job within the business to get paid that's separate from that. I remember a while ago writing up something along the lines of paying people $800 a month, because that would give them their disability amount plus the maximum amount they can have over that. And people could almost just say, well, I'm going to do this, and this for $800 a month. And it's like, okay, just do whatever you want. And that gives them responsibility. I feel like people that are visionaries have good hearts and weak egos. So they're shitty at functioning, but they have these visions and they have these perspectives and they have these perceptions. And they're not necessarily functional perceptions. They're more contextual. They're not content of like, oh, now I can get this. So there's no real value for them in society. It's more that context. And we are that context, and we create that context. So all these people, they have that context within them, but they're not able to create the context. They're not able to co-create it as the fabric of society, because there's no way to do that right now. But this would give a bit of a way for us to create that context of society. Because it's not just about saying, okay, well, we have a bunch of visionary people and let's not stigmatize them. It's about, okay, we have a bunch of visionary people and they're going to help co-create the world. Like, that's the purpose. And if a visionary is able to step into what it is they're here to do, there would be no concept of stigma. And I also had a part in the plan that I originally had was that some of the money the person makes, the 800, actually goes towards wellness. So the first bit would be connecting with their altruism, and then maybe that would be a time bank. They could trade that time for coaching, they could trade that time for DNA testing, they could trade that time for EMP and other ways to bring more clarity. So first step is altruism. And then second step is, actually the first step of this is the safety stuff. And the second step is altruism. And the third step is earning one's clarity, not because they need to earn it, but because that's the sustainable model of it. And then once they've earned that, then they can, they can work on their visions and their creativity, and they can work on their own project, or they can help somebody else with their project. So each person, there's all these projects within the business that people can choose to step into and help, or they can create their own project, or a bit of both, or they can work on the visionary stuff, just contribute something. They can contribute something to the business, and maybe they can actually earn parts of the business, so that way they're making money within the business. And it's kind of like a pyramid scheme in a way, like how somebody will like get their people to be under them and stuff. In a way, it's kind of like that in a way, but it's the opposite. Is you get people under you so you get paid versus, well, I guess they try to do that too in that multi-level stuff. But so I also have the thought that train people for new roles in society. So some of these people would create their own roles, and some of that could have to do with like being creatively maladjusted or creatively adjusted, creatively adjusting society. And this will help people come alive. This will help make meaning, and that's what actually drives us, is this meaning and feeling like we're actually alive. And so that's why I want to call it Special Messages Wellness, because there are special messages, and we can live in that domain of special messages, or we can live in the domain of the ego, or a combination. And it's about making the special messages outweigh the ego messages in the mind. And that's usually often what is going on with people, is that they're not functioning because maybe they're having so-called delusions or hallucinations. They might just be seeing a better world, and then they can't function in this one. So in that way, maybe the special messages get out of the way a bit, because one is actually able to co-create with the special messages instead of being funneled back into ego consciousness. So I feel like we could have visionary trialogues and visionary heart storms, and it'd be like training visionary workers.